In this module, we're going to examine the question of the relationship between the climate and rural property. There is a growing belief that there is a two-way relationship between the climate and the rural sector. In the past, rural land users have been very interested in the climate because that is probably one of the two major determinants on the productivity of farming land. However, in recent times there has been considerable interest in the possibility that the relationship may go the other way. What we're going to be looking at in this module is the evidence on both sides of the question. From the point of view of rural values, the long-term prospects for farming land, which is intimately tied up with environment, has to be examined in the light of recent scientific discoveries. What we'll be finding is that theories and beliefs that were current even as close as 10 years ago are now becoming seriously questioned as we're learning more about the way that the climate operates. A closely related issue is the question of carbon. Farming is very much about carbon management. Anything that grows on a farm, one way or another, either produces carbon or basically absorbs it into crops or forests. The current interest in the development of carbon property as a new form of property rights is something that any property economist should take considerable interest in, and it is a topic that the Australian Property Institute has been following for some years now. For the rural land user, the whole question of carbon credits has a particularly important aspect, and this is that there is the possibility of using land for the purpose of selling the carbon credits due to the carbon that has been captured on the property. A little reflection will reveal that the use of rural property in this way is very much a one-time opportunity for the landowner. This is very much like operating the farm as a mine, but in reverse. In the case of the mine, something is taken out of the land and eventually the land is rendered unproductive. In the case of carbon sequestration, the capturing of carbon and fixing it into the land, usually by forestry, the process works in the other direction. However, it has the same ultimate effect. That is, carbon is captured and stored on the land, again usually in the form of forestry, although there are experiments and studies being done into the possibility of capturing carbon in other ways, such as subsoil carbon. But in doing so, there is only a certain amount of carbon that can be stored on an amount of rural land. Basically, there are only so many trees that you can plant per hectare. And once this is done, with the requirements of carbon property, which is basically to keep the carbon captured for a century, it means that for the next 100 years, the land is unproductive. It's unavailable for any land use, perhaps making it mildly comparable to perhaps radioactive land or land that's been polluted in some other way. This module enables us to look into some of these issues and their impacts on property value, and also bring us up to speed with the current science in this rather interesting and complicated but also controversial area.